what does it mean to live? This question haunts every human soul, yet most of us spend our entire lives avoiding it. We busy ourselves with the mechanics of existence, the daily rituals that keep us moving forward, the social expectations that give our days structure and our achievements meaning. We spend our lives chasing careers, money, comfort, recognition. We follow the script laid out for us: go to school, get a job, marry, build a family, advance step by step in society's ladder. It all feels proper, respectable, the way things are meant to be. We wake each morning with plans and purposes. We measure our worth by our productivity, our status by our possessions, our success by society's standards. We attend the right schools, join the right clubs, live in the right neighborhoods. We speak the language of respectability and wear the masks of propriety. But what if, at the end, you discover it was all a lie? That you lived not your life, but the life others expected of you? And when death comes, you realize too late that you never truly lived at all. This is the haunting truth at the heart of Leo Tolstoy's masterpiece, The Death of Ivan Ilyich. Written in 1886 during Tolstoy's own spiritual crisis, it remains one of literature's most penetrating examinations of what it means to be human. It is not just a story about death, it is a story about us, about the terrifying possibility that life itself can become a kind of death. When lived without authenticity, without truth, without genuine connection to our deepest selves. In this novella, Tolstoy strips away every comfortable illusion we harbor about modern life. He forces us to confront the possibility that everything we consider important, career success, social status, material comfort, might be nothing more than elaborate distractions from the fundamental questions of existence. Through Ivan's journey from unconscious living to conscious dying, Tolstoy reveals how death becomes not the enemy of life, but its greatest teacher. Tolstoy begins the story not with Ivan himself, but with his colleagues. This is no accident. By starting with their reaction to his death, Tolstoy immediately establishes one of the novel's central themes: the profound isolation of individual existence in a world that values function over being. Ivan Ilyich, a respected judge, has died. The news spreads through the legal offices of St. Petersburg like any other piece of administrative information. His colleagues react as many still do today. Not with grief, but with calculation. Who will take his position? How will his death benefit their careers? What opportunities does his absence create? Peter Ivanovich, Ivan's closest friend, receives the news and immediately begins calculating the advantages. Perhaps Schwartz will get the promotion, which means Peter might move up as well. The mathematics of advancement replace the mathematics of loss. They attend his funeral out of obligation, but their thoughts are already on promotions and inheritance. During the wake, Peter Ivanovich finds himself trapped in uncomfortable conversation with Ivan's widow, Praskovia Fedorovna. She speaks not of loss or love, but of pensions and financial arrangements. Even in her grief, she approaches her husband's death as a problem to be solved, a situation to be managed. The depth of human connection that should define such moments is replaced by the shallow mechanics of social obligation. It is a cruel beginning, but it forces us to face an uncomfortable truth. When we die, the world moves on. Our death, which to us is the most overwhelming reality, becomes to others a formality, a piece of news, a passing inconvenience. This indifference is not unique to Ivan's colleagues or his era. It is the natural state of human society, where individual consciousness exists in isolation, where each person's inner world remains fundamentally unknowable to others. Tolstoy suggests that this isolation is compounded by the artificial nature of modern social relationships, built on professional connections and social conventions rather than genuine human understanding. And so, the novel asks, if the world forgets us so quickly, what remains of our lives? If our existence makes so little difference to others, what meaning can we claim for ourselves? We then return to the beginning, to understand who Ivan Ilyich was and how he came to live the life he lived. Tolstoy's genius lies in making Ivan completely ordinary, neither exceptionally good nor notably evil, but representative of an entire class of people who navigate life through conformity rather than consciousness. He was not a villain, not a tyrant, not a saint. He was ordinary, a man who followed the rules. This ordinariness is crucial to Tolstoy's message. Ivan is not a cautionary tale about extreme behavior or moral failure. He is a mirror for anyone who has ever chosen the path of least resistance, who has followed social expectations without questioning their deeper meaning. Ivan's early life unfolds with predictable precision. He studied law because it offered respectability and financial security. He excelled not through passion for justice, but through diligent adherence to procedure. His success came not from brilliant insight, but from reliable competence within established systems. He worked diligently, following every protocol, mastering every convention. His colleagues respected him because he was predictable, manageable, safe. He never challenged the system because he derived his identity from his place within it. His sense of self depended entirely on external validation, on meeting others' expectations rather than exploring his own desires or values. He married not for deep love, but because it was suitable. His wife, Praskovia Fedorovna, came from the right social background and brought the right connections. Their courtship followed proper forms. Their wedding met social expectations. Their early marriage looked exactly as marriages should look. At first, life seemed promising. A good salary, a respected position, a comfortable home. The external markers of success aligned perfectly with social definitions of a life well lived. Ivan could look around and see that he was achieving everything society told him to want. But behind the surface, his marriage soured. His family life grew cold. His friendships were shallow. The initial satisfaction of meeting social expectations gave way to a growing sense of emptiness, though Ivan never allowed himself to examine this feeling directly. Instead of confronting these deeper issues, Ivan threw himself even more completely into the pursuit of external validation. Yet Ivan clung to what society called a proper life. He decorated his home with elegant furniture, carefully chosen to reflect his status. He spoke with the right people at the right social gatherings. He maintained the appearances of success with meticulous attention to detail. His life looked correct. But it was hollow. He lived outwardly, never inwardly. Every decision was made based on how it would appear to others rather than what it might mean to him personally. He never asked himself what he truly wanted or needed, never examined his own values or desires. Ivan's relationship with his family became increasingly strained as the years passed. His wife grew more demanding and less satisfied, constantly pushing for greater social advancement and more luxurious possessions. His children became strangers to him, relationships defined by duty rather than affection. Yet he never questioned whether this was simply the natural progression of adult life or whether something fundamental was missing. And so, he mistook comfort for happiness and conformity for meaning. This mistake is perhaps the most dangerous trap of modern existence, because comfort can be achieved without happiness, and conformity can exist without any real sense of purpose or fulfillment. Ivan achieved everything he was supposed to want, while losing touch with everything that might have made those achievements meaningful. Tolstoy's warning is clear: a life that looks perfect on the outside can be dead on the inside. The external markers of success, career advancement, financial security, social recognition, can mask a profound spiritual emptiness. When we define ourselves entirely through external validation, we risk losing contact with our authentic selves entirely. And then, the turning point. The moment when the carefully constructed facade begins to crumble, when the body refuses to cooperate with the mind's elaborate self-deceptions. Ivan suffers a strange pain in his side. It begins subtly, almost imperceptibly, a minor discomfort that could easily be ignored, dismissed, explained away. In any other story, this might be merely a plot device. In Tolstoy's hands, it becomes something far more profound, the moment when physical reality intrudes upon psychological denial. At first, he ignores it. This response is entirely characteristic of Ivan's approach to anything that threatens his carefully ordered existence. He keeps working, keeps attending dinners, keeps laughing with colleagues. The pain is simply another inconvenience to be managed, another problem to be solved through proper procedure and professional consultation. But the pain grows, it develops its own logic, its own timeline, utterly indifferent to Ivan's plans and preferences. For the first time in his adult life, Ivan encounters something that cannot be managed through social conventions or professional competence. He consults doctors, approaching his illness exactly as he would approach any other professional challenge. Surely these medical experts, with their advanced degrees and established procedures, can solve this problem just as legal experts solve legal problems. They examine him with cold detachment, prescribing treatments but never offering hope. The more Ivan visits them, the more he realizes. They are pretending, just as he always pretended. They avoid the truth, that he is dying. The doctors speak in technical language, focus on symptoms rather than outcomes, maintain professional distance to avoid confronting the fundamental reality of human mortality. In these medical consultations, Tolstoy reveals the broader pattern of modern life, how professional roles and social conventions become elaborate forms of mutual deception. The doctors cannot admit their limitations without undermining their professional authority. Ivan cannot acknowledge his mortality without destroying his sense of control over his existence. This mutual pretense creates a profound isolation. Ivan finds himself surrounded by people who claim to be helping him, while simultaneously refusing to acknowledge the reality of his situation. The very institutions that promise security and solutions, medicine, family, career, prove inadequate when confronted with the ultimate questions of existence. The pain intensifies. His body weakens. He becomes bedridden, dependent, humiliated. Every aspect of his carefully maintained dignity begins to collapse. The man who prided himself on proper appearance and social composure finds himself reduced to basic physical needs and undeniable vulnerability. And slowly, a horrifying thought enters his mind. What if my life was wrong? This question emerges not from philosophical reflection, but from physical suffering. Pain becomes the great teacher, stripping away the comfortable assumptions that allowed Ivan to avoid deeper questions about his existence. When the body can no longer be ignored, when physical reality intrudes upon psychological construction, the mind is forced to confront what it has spent a lifetime avoiding. This question torments him day and night as he lies in bed. Ivan replays his life. What begins as a simple medical problem evolves into the most profound spiritual crisis imaginable. Faced with his own mortality, Ivan is forced to confront not just the fact that he will die, but the possibility that he never truly lived. The physical pain becomes secondary to a much deeper psychological torment. In the enforced stillness of his sickbed, without the distractions of career and social obligations, Ivan's mind turns inward for perhaps the first time in his adult life. He followed the rules. He did what was expected. He was proper, respectable. By every social measure, his life was successful. He achieved everything society told him to pursue: education, career advancement, financial security, social status, a proper family. Yet now, confronting the end of this life, these achievements feel hollow and meaningless. But was it real? Was it truly life? These questions cut to the heart of human existence. What distinguishes mere biological survival from authentic living? What separates going through the motions of life from actually experiencing it? Tolstoy describes Ivan's inner torment with brutal honesty. The author had experienced his own spiritual crisis, his own confrontation with mortality and meaninglessness. Through Ivan, he explores the terror that awaits anyone who has lived unconsciously and is forced to become conscious at the moment of death. He realizes that death is coming, and yet, it is not death itself that terrifies him most. It is the thought that perhaps he never actually lived. This realization represents Tolstoy's most profound insight into the human condition, that the fear of death is often less about the end of life than about the recognition that we may never have truly begun to live. Ivan's terror is existential rather than simply physical. He is not afraid of pain or unconsciousness or the unknown. He is afraid that his entire existence has been a form of sleepwalking, that he has spent his life following scripts written by others rather than discovering his own authentic voice. This is the deepest form of existential horror. To realize too late that you were never yourself, that you traded authenticity for acceptance, that you lived not with truth, but with lies. The lies were not malicious or deliberate, but they were comprehensive. They shaped every major decision, every relationship, every goal and aspiration. Ivan begins to see how completely he allowed others to define his life. His career path was chosen not from personal passion, but from social expectation. His marriage was arranged not from deep love, but from appropriate matching. His friendships were based not on genuine connection, but on professional networking. His very sense of identity was constructed from external validation rather than internal exploration. The recognition of this pattern creates a form of psychological vertigo. If everything he thought he knew about himself was actually just a reflection of others' expectations, Who was he really? What authentic self existed beneath the layers of social conditioning and professional role-playing? As Ivan suffers, the world around him continues with indifference. This indifference is not merely callous, it reveals the fundamental isolation that characterizes modern existence. The people closest to Ivan cannot bear to confront his suffering, because doing so would force them to confront their own mortality and the meaninglessness of their own lives. His wife sees his illness as an inconvenience, a disruption of her social routine. Praskovia Fedorovna approaches his dying exactly as she approached their living together, as a problem to be managed rather than a profound human experience to be shared. She focuses on practical arrangements, medical bills, household management, social obligations, because engaging with the deeper reality would threaten her own carefully constructed sense of normalcy. Her response is not unusual or particularly heartless. It represents the normal human tendency to avoid confronting mortality and meaninglessness. By treating Ivan's dying as primarily a logistical challenge, she protects herself from having to examine her own life too closely. His colleagues grow impatient, already anticipating his replacement. The legal system that gave Ivan his identity and purpose continues to function perfectly well without him. The work he devoted his life to proves to be entirely replaceable, accomplished just as well by others who step into his role without missing a beat. This professional indifference reveals the fundamental emptiness of seeking meaning through career achievement. The institutions that promise significance and lasting impact prove to be utterly indifferent to the individuals who serve them. Ivan's decades of dedicated service earn him nothing more than a polite funeral and a prompt replacement. Even his children, though they feel some pity, cannot bear to face his suffering for long. They are young and naturally focused on their own futures. Their father's dying forces them to confront realities about aging, mortality, and meaninglessness that their youth naturally resists. Only one person shows him true compassion, Gerasim, a young servant. Gerasim holds his legs when the pain is unbearable. He speaks to him with honesty. He does not pretend. In Gerasim's presence, Ivan experiences perhaps the first genuine human connection of his adult life. Gerasim represents everything that Ivan's sophisticated social world lacks: authenticity, simplicity, direct human compassion. He approaches Ivan's suffering without pretense or calculation. He acknowledges the reality of death without trying to manage or minimize it. His care is not based on professional obligation or social convention, but on simple human recognition. Through Gerasim, Tolstoy suggests that authentic human connection is possible, but it exists outside the artificial constructions of modern social life. The young servant can offer what the educated professionals cannot, because he has not learned to hide behind roles and procedures. And in Gerasim's simple, truthful kindness, Ivan sees what life could have been. Not built on status, not on appearances, but on honesty, compassion, and authenticity. This vision of an alternative way of living makes Ivan's recognition of his wasted life all the more painful. The contrast between Gerasim and everyone else in Ivan's life is stark and deliberate. Tolstoy uses this simple peasant to show that wisdom and authentic living are not products of education or sophistication, but of maintaining connection to basic human truths that modern society tends to obscure. In his final days, Ivan stops struggling. He stops pretending. The lies he lived by collapse. This collapse is both terrifying and liberating. After spending a lifetime constructing and maintaining a false self, Ivan finally allows that construction to crumble. The process is not gentle or gradual. It happens with the force of revelation, the sudden recognition of truth that can no longer be denied or managed. All the careful arrangements of his life, the proper appearance, the social positioning, the professional identity, suddenly reveal themselves as elaborate performances with no real substance. And in that collapse, something opens. For the first time since childhood, perhaps, Ivan encounters his authentic self. Stripped of all pretense, faced with undeniable reality, he begins to experience genuine emotion and real connection. He begins to feel pity for his family, even for his shallow wife. This pity is not condescending, but compassionate. He recognizes that they, like him, are trapped in patterns of living that prevent authentic experience. Their inability to connect with his dying comes not from cruelty, but from their own fear and confusion. He feels love for his son. This love is different from the dutiful affection he maintained during his healthy years. It is direct, unmediated by social expectation or role performance. For perhaps the first time, he sees his child as a person rather than as a reflection of his own status or achievement. For the first time in his life, he stops thinking about appearances and feels the truth of human connection. This shift from external focus to internal experience marks the beginning of authentic living, even as biological life approaches its end. The irony is profound. Ivan discovers how to live only as he is dying. Yet Tolstoy suggests this discovery is still meaningful. The capacity for authentic experience, for genuine love and real compassion, exists within every person. Most of us simply spend our lives buried under layers of social conditioning and role performance. As death approaches, Ivan discovers what it means to live. And in his final breath, he sees not darkness, but light. He whispers, "Death is finished. It is no more." This transformation is not merely physical, but spiritual. Ivan's dying becomes a form of birth, the emergence of his authentic self after a lifetime of false existence. The light he sees is not necessarily supernatural, but represents the illumination of consciousness, the clarity that comes from finally seeing life without illusion. Tolstoy does not write this story to terrify us with death. He writes it to awaken us to life. The author's intention is not to create morbid fascination with dying, but to use mortality as a lens for examining how we live. The tragedy of Ivan Ilyich is not that he died. We all will. Death is the one certainty that unites every human experience. The tragedy is that he lived unconsciously, never questioning, never seeking truth until it was too late. This unconscious living is perhaps the greatest danger facing modern existence. We can spend entire lifetimes following scripts written by others, pursuing goals we never chose, maintaining relationships based on expectation rather than authentic connection. The machinery of modern life is so efficient at providing external structure that we can avoid internal development entirely. Tolstoy forces us to confront what we avoid, that our lives, if lived superficially, may one day appear meaningless, that death is not the enemy, but the mirror. It strips away our illusions and asks, did you live authentically? Did you love truly? Did you seek truth, or did you merely obey? These questions are not abstract philosophical inquiries, but practical challenges for daily existence. How do we distinguish between authentic choices and social conditioning? How do we separate genuine desires from external expectations? How do we build real relationships rather than role-based interactions? The story suggests that these questions cannot be answered through intellectual analysis alone. They require the kind of honest self-examination that most of us avoid until crisis forces confrontation. Ivan needed terminal illness to break through his patterns of self-deception, but perhaps we can learn from his experience without requiring the same dramatic catalyst. Tolstoy's implicit advice is to begin this examination while there is still time to act on what we discover. To question our assumptions about success, meaning, and relationships before death forces the questioning. To seek authentic experience while we still have the capacity to change how we live. When Tolstoy wrote this story in 1886, he was responding to the specific social and spiritual crises of Russian society in the late 19th century. Yet the themes he explored have only become more relevant in contemporary life. The pressures toward conformity, the emphasis on external achievement over internal development, the replacement of authentic relationships with role-based interactions, all these patterns have intensified in modern society. Today's Ivan Ilyiches might be corporate executives climbing career ladders, social media influencers chasing validation, or suburban families pursuing lifestyle ideals promoted by marketing. The specific forms of unconscious living change, but the underlying pattern remains the same, allowing others to define our goals, values, and measures of success. The modern equivalents of Ivan's proper life might include educational achievements, career advancement, material accumulation, social status, physical appearance, or digital popularity. These pursuits are not inherently meaningless, but they become hollow when pursued without self-examination, when they replace rather than serve authentic living. Contemporary life offers even more sophisticated forms of distraction from fundamental questions than were available to Ivan. We have unprecedented access to information, entertainment, and social connection, Yet, these resources can also serve as elaborate forms of avoidance. We can stay constantly busy, constantly stimulated, constantly connected, while remaining fundamentally disconnected from our deepest selves. Social media platforms, career networking, consumer culture, and entertainment industries all provide external structure for identity formation. Like Ivan's legal career and social climbing, these systems can offer the illusion of meaningful activity while preventing deeper self-examination. The challenge is not to reject these aspects of modern life entirely, but to engage with them consciously rather than unconsciously. To use external opportunities for authentic self-expression rather than allowing them to replace authentic self-development. The story suggests several practical approaches to avoiding Ivan's tragedy. The first is the practice of regular self-examination. Not the obsessive self-monitoring that characterizes modern self-help culture, but the kind of honest questioning that cuts through social conditioning to discover authentic preferences and values. This might involve asking questions like, am I pursuing this goal because I genuinely value it, or because others expect it of me? Are my relationships based on authentic connection or role performance? When I imagine my death, what aspects of my life feel meaningful and what aspects feel empty? Such questions are uncomfortable precisely because they threaten the comfortable assumptions that allow unconscious living. But discomfort in self-examination is often a sign that the questioning is reaching something real and important. The story also emphasizes the importance of authentic human connection. Ivan's tragedy is partly that he lived surrounded by people yet died essentially alone. His relationships were based on social convention rather than genuine understanding. Building authentic relationships requires the courage to be vulnerable, to share genuine thoughts and feelings rather than maintaining appropriate appearances. It requires listening to others as individuals rather than as role performers. It requires accepting the messiness and difficulty of real human connection, rather than settling for the smooth efficiency of professional or social interactions. Gerasim's care for Ivan provides a model: direct, honest, uncomplicating, focused on human need rather than social expectation. Such care is rare in modern life precisely because it requires stepping outside the protective barriers of role and convention. Perhaps most importantly, the story advocates for conscious living, making choices based on self-examination rather than external pressure, pursuing goals that serve authentic values rather than social expectations, engaging with life directly rather than through the mediating filters of role and convention. This consciousness is not a destination but a practice. It requires ongoing attention and regular course correction. It involves accepting that authentic living is often messier, more uncertain, and less socially validated than unconscious conformity. While Tolstoy was deeply interested in spiritual questions, the death of Ivan Ilyich transcends specific religious doctrine to address universal spiritual themes. The light that Ivan sees at the end can be interpreted in religious terms, but it also represents the illumination of consciousness, the clarity that comes from finally seeing life without illusion. The spiritual dimension of the story is not about afterlife beliefs, but about the quality of present moment awareness. Ivan's transformation happens not through religious conversion, but through the removal of layers of self-deception that prevented authentic experience. This suggests that spiritual development is not necessarily about adopting particular beliefs or practices, but about increasing honesty and awareness in daily life. The spiritual crisis Ivan experiences is available to anyone willing to examine their life with sufficient depth and courage. Tolstoy finds the sacred not in religious ritual or doctrine, but in simple human connection and honest self-awareness. Gerasim's care, Ivan's final love for his family, the recognition of truth after a lifetime of pretense, these moments of authenticity become sacred experiences. This perspective suggests that spiritual development is not separate from ordinary life, but emerges from engaging with ordinary life more consciously and authentically. The transformation Ivan undergoes is available in every moment, in every relationship, in every choice between authenticity and pretense. When Tolstoy himself wrote this story, he was struggling with his own fear of death, his own crisis of meaning. At the height of his literary fame, possessing wealth, social status, and international recognition, he found himself asking the same questions that torment Ivan. What does it all mean? Have I truly lived? Through Ivan, he discovered a truth, that death loses its terror when life is lived with honesty, that to live rightly is not to conform, but to love, to seek, to awaken. The story emerged from Tolstoy's personal spiritual crisis, but it speaks to the universal human challenge of finding meaning and authenticity in a world that often rewards their opposite. And so, Ivan's story is our warning, and our chance, because unlike him, we still have time. We have the opportunity to examine our lives while there is still time to change them. We can begin asking the hard questions before crisis forces the asking. The question is not whether you will die. The question is, when death comes, will you be able to say you truly lived? This question is not meant to create anxiety, but to inspire action. Not to judge past choices, but to influence present ones. Not to guarantee particular outcomes, but to encourage conscious engagement with the process of living. Ivan's tragedy was not that he made wrong choices, but that he avoided conscious choice entirely. He allowed others to determine his path, his values, his definition of success. But consciousness is available in every moment. The capacity for authentic living exists in every present moment, regardless of past patterns or future uncertainties. The story suggests that authentic living is not a destination to reach, but a quality of attention to bring to whatever circumstances we find ourselves in. Whether we are healthy or ill, young or old, successful or struggling, the choice between conscious and unconscious living remains available. Perhaps the deepest message of the death of Ivan Ilyich is that authentic living requires courage. It takes courage to question social expectations, to examine our own motives, to build genuine relationships, to face uncertainty and mortality directly. But this courage is not extraordinary heroism available only to special people. It is the ordinary human capacity for honesty, self-examination, and authentic connection. These capacities exist within everyone, though they may be buried under years of social conditioning and role performance. Ivan's story reminds us that these capacities remain available even at the end of life, even after decades of unconscious living. How much more available they are while we still have time to act on what we discover. The gift of Ivan's story is not just its warning, but its promise. That authentic living is possible, that genuine connection is available, that consciousness can emerge from unconsciousness, that it is never too late to begin living truly, until it is too late. The question remains, when death comes, will you be able to say you truly lived? But perhaps more importantly, today, right now, in this present moment, are you choosing to live truly? The answer to that question shapes not only how we die, but how we live. And that choice is available to us now, in every moment, for as long as we have moments to choose.